As crazy as today has been with games across the country, we have to open the show with the biggest news of the day. Reports from Tuscaloosa that star Alabama freshman Brandon Miller transported the handgun to his teammate Darius Miles at the crime scene that was used in the fatal shooting of 23-year-old Jamea Harris in January. This information became public today in a preliminary hearing for Miles and Michael Lynn Davis, who are facing capital murder charges. Miles was dismissed from the team after the incident. Miller was not, and today is the first public acknowledgement of his involvement that night. Now, Nate Oats answered questions publicly earlier today, saying, quote, "We knew about that," when asked about Miller allegedly bringing the gun to Miles. Oats then went on to say, quote, "Can't control everything anybody does outside of practice. Nobody knew that was going to happen. Brandon hasn't been in any type of trouble, nor is he in any type of trouble in this case. Wrong spot at the wrong time." Now, it is important to note that when asked why Miller did not receive any charges stemming from this incident, Tuscaloosa Chief Deputy DA Paula Whitley said, quote, "There's nothing we could charge him with according to the law." Now, understandably, there has been a lot of backlash to Oates' comments throughout the day today. Earlier this evening, Oates sought to clarify what he termed as his unfortunate remarks, releasing a written statement that said the following: "We were informed by law enforcement of other student athletes being in the vicinity, and law enforcement has repeatedly told us that no other student athletes were suspects. They were witnesses only. Our understanding is that they have all been fully truthful and cooperative. In no way did I intend to downplay the seriousness of this situation or the tragedy of that night. My prayers continue to go out to Jamea Harris's family." That's a lot to take in, gentlemen. But we're going to try. This situation is completely unprecedented. The leading scorer and likely freshman of the year in college basketball on the number 2 team in the country, and he has played every single game since this incident occurred. Now, both of you have coached at the highest level. Certainly neither of you have dealt with an exact replica of this situation, but I'd like to start by getting both of your thoughts on this. As a head coach, when you have a player involved in an incident where the police are investigating, how do you begin to decide what to do with that player's involvement on your team? Matt, let's go to you first.
Well, I think first off, I think we have to, this is the challenging part because we have to talk about this because we're a college basketball, show, and this is the biggest news in college basketball today, even with all of the great games. And that's unfortunate because Jamea Harris tragically lost her life. And I know we have to talk about it from a basketball standpoint, but that's a mother who her daughter's never going to, grow up to see her mom. And I think, just understanding like that is way bigger than basketball. She lost her life, and it's very, very unfortunate and it's sad. But I know we have to talk about it in terms of our show. And it was news today in basketball. As a coach, a situation like this is not Nate Oats' decision. Okay, this is not Nate Oats' decision on whether or not Brandon Miller should play, should not play, should be in the lineup. This goes way above his head in terms of the food chain of college basketball. His boss, his athletic director, and Greg Byrne, the president, board of whoever else, everyone, because of the magnitude of this situation, someone lost their life. There's no way that Nate Oats is making the decision on whether or not Brandon Miller should play. So I think you got to start there. As a head coach, you're communicating to your athletic director every single day with a situation like this. I've never had anything like this, even close to this as a head coach. But when you're dealing with something that happened off the floor, the athletic director has to be involved from day one. And like a situation like this, that's even tenfold from anything else. He's involved. The president gets involved. The higher ups at the University of Alabama are involved to make sure that they let the legal proceedings play out, the interviews, whatever needed to happen to see if Brandon Miller was involved, wasn't involved. But he would not have put that uniform back on and been out there on the floor had the athletic director not approved it, had the president of the school not approved it. This was just too big of a situation.
Now, I will reset real quickly. We are officially live on Sirius XM as we speak. This is Greg Waddell, Matt McCall, Laval Jordan, the Field of 68 After Dark, and we are discussing today's news that Brandon Miller did transport the handgun to his teammate Darius Miles at the crime scene that was used in the fatal shooting of 23-year-old Jamea Harris. Laval, we'll throw it to you next. Your thoughts on everything that has come to light today?
Matt hit it. I mean, so here's the sad part is in this season of college basketball, think about this. We've talked about people getting killed on college campuses more than we need to be talking about people getting killed on college campuses. At New Mexico State, at Alabama, at Michigan State recently. So I think there's a larger problem, a larger issue. It's like, why do college kids, why do guys have guns to be, transporting or in the first place? Like, this is something that needs to be addressed on a greater, on a greater whole, because we should be talking about, a rivalry game or college basketball and stats. We should not be talking about this. So that's my first thought on it, Greg, is that. And secondly, same as Matt just said, I mean, having gone through not this, but in any instance, you defer as the head coach. You say what you're allowed to say. You can't say much, and you defer to the authorities first because it's a legal issue. It's a crime. Somebody's life was lost. So we have prayers out to her family, but you defer, I mean, to everyone else. Like, you make no decisions. You're not allowed to.
No question.
So the authorities make the first decisions on charges, no charges, indictments or anything of that nature. And then your administration decides, if there's still an ongoing investigation. So you're listening and being directed. That's how this goes. So if a young man it's almost, same instance, if there's an injury or there's a concussion, like, you're deferring to a trainer. You don't get to make the decision. So the administration is telling you, and you're on the phone twice a day, every day, at least, and getting, counsel and being advised on, how to proceed. And that's it. And then you move on based on what information you're given and what advice you're given.
And I guess to that point, Laval, it is important to reiterate, again, Tuscaloosa chief deputy said, quote, "There's nothing we could charge him with according to the law." So while there has been a pretty loud outcry for why has this kid been playing, those that are in the know, have more information, have been investigating this. And if that decision truly was handed down from the university or from the athletic department or from whoever down to Nate Oats, it would appear, what has been communicated is that Miller is at least somewhat innocent in this and is not currently being investigated despite his role in the night. I do want to ask you guys this because, while you both do reiterate, like, hey, this isn't his decision, and that makes a lot of sense to me. I think if there is something to criticize about Oats at all today, it would be his comments. And now we need the context of these comments as well, right? Like, I'm sure Nate Oats got out of practice today, was probably not privy to exactly all the information that had been now made public knowledge in light of the testimony today. And suddenly the spotlight is back on him to comment on a thing that he probably did not have top of mind, even if he should have. I guess how fair is it to criticize Oats for the comments of, quote, wrong spot at the wrong time, given a situation like this?
Yeah, I would say it's fair. Nate, I think Nate wishes he wouldn't have said that. You don't want what you don't, especially given the gravity of something like this, you don't want to minimize, any of it. Typically you have time to process and talk and think about and talk about. But if you just walked out of practice and next thing you know, you got, this happened while you're in practice and people want to hear you speak on it or give a comment on it, there's no prep for it. You walk in and you're still processing what you just heard. But Nate, I think Nate, obviously he came out with a statement following that, knowing, that probably wasn't the right thing to say in that moment. And, I think that's fair to say, and it's hard to be in that situation. Look, again, I haven't been there where you're in a practice and things are happening in practice. And next thing you know, you right after practice is over, hey, coach, come sit at the podium and answer questions. But, I think probably less is more, and they probably wishes he would have said less.
Yeah, Greg, I think too, just it was interesting when the video came out. Like, it was pretty early in the day. I don't know if they had an early practice today or what, but I thought his statement was what should have came out, right? That's what should have been said right then and there. When all this news broke, when Brandon Miller's name was getting brought up in this early in today, it's almost like, hey, this is where we stand. This is where we stand. Take a breath before you go and get in front of a camera and get in front of a microphone, especially if it was right after practice. But it was interesting because it was early in the day. But I thought the statement was pretty strong. But once you have a camera in front of you and there's a microphone there, you can't retract what you said because you said it. And, I thought the statement was exactly what should have been said for this situation. And again, this is a tragic situation.
And I would say
go ahead.
I'd say there's a fumble. Here's how this should play out: is Nate shouldn't have been at the podium.
Right.
It should have been a statement issued first.
No question.
And then you follow up
at the podium.
So as you gather information,
no question,
then you come back and you follow up and you put your head coach at the podium to answer any questions, but you don't put him up. You don't put him up there first.
Right.
Not knowing all the information, you're intaking information you haven't processed. So you just come up with a statement and put out the statement first. And then as you gain more information, because I don't know if you still have it all.
That's right.
Now you answer questions later. That's how that should go.
Right. And I'm not comparing this to a game because this is uncomparable to that. But like Coach is saying, when you don't have all that information, and sometimes you're in a game and the game's so emotional and you go in front of the mic, the cameras, and you're still on that adrenaline from the game, things come out of your mouth that you wouldn't say under certain situations and circumstances, if that makes sense. And again, like Coach Jordan said, man, release the statement first. Gather more information. Here, Coach, here's the facts. Here's what's being said. Here's what's being put out there. Now, here's the statement we release. Here's your quote. Now let's go in front of the camera, in front of the microphone, and talk.
Yeah. Well, I thank you both for shedding some light on this and giving your thoughtful opinions and speaking from the heart on this. Certainly an unprecedented situation. And on behalf of everybody involved with the Field of 68, again, what matters here is that we have a victim of a senseless crime here. So our thoughts and prayers go out to Jamea Harris's family. But Laval, as you said, we need a lot more than thoughts and prayers. I mean, this is almost an every week occurrence at this point in a show where we're trying to talk about college basketball. We're talking about gun violence. So we'll end on that. We're going to come back after the break and we're going to talk some of the